I was staring out of the glass wall of my corner office, watching the city hum beneath me, when my phone buzzed. The vibration against my desk was sharp, insistent, almost like it knew the message it carried would split open a piece of my past I'd worked so hard to seal shut. The text was simple. "We need to talk. Mom's been asking questions again." For a moment, I just sat there, fingers resting on the edge of my silk blouse, smoothing the fabric as if that could calm the tightness rising in my chest. The irony wasn't lost on me. Years ago, I would have given anything for my mother's approval. Now, she only reached for me when she wanted answers or money. I leaned back in my leather chair, the skyline glittering like 1,000 untold stories, and let myself breathe. I was composed, polished. A woman who had built an empire quietly, without needing to announce it to the very family that once dismissed me. Yet here it was again, the past clawing at my present, demanding I open old wounds. I brushed a loose strand of hair behind my ear, lifted my phone, and stared at the screen. My lips curved into the faintest smile, one part bitter, one part triumphant. If only they knew the truth. And soon they would. I still remember the night everything cracked open. I was 23, sitting at the old oak dining table in my parents' house, the smell of overcooked pot roast clinging to the air. My mother, Linda, sat across from me, her manicured nails tapping against a glass of Chardonnay. She always tapped when she was impatient. My father read the paper, not once looking up, as if the ink on the page was more important than the words spilling from my mouth. "I got the offer," I'd said, my voice trembling, though I tried to hide it. "The firm in New York. They want me to start as a junior associate." For Heartbeat, I thought she'd smile. That maybe she'd say, "Finally, honey, we're proud of you." Instead, her lips thinned. "And who's paying for that little dream?" she asked coolly. "Because it won't be us." The lump in my throat swelled. "I didn't ask you to pay. I wanted you to know." She leaned back, swirling her wine, eyes glinting. "You'll come running back. Girls like you don't last long in places like that." Her words sliced deeper than I wanted to admit. My hands shook under the table, and I dug my nails into my palms to keep from crying. My father finally looked up, but only to say, "Listen to your mother. Don't waste time chasing something you can't sustain." That was the moment I realized I wasn't just on my own. I was unwanted in my own family's plans. Later that night, I sat on the porch with my grandmother's old locket in my hand. She'd passed when I was 16, but I could still hear her voice. "Strength doesn't shout, darling. It endures. When the world tells you no, that's when you prove them wrong." The locket was small, gold-plated, with a tiny crack along the hinge. Most would have tossed it aside, but to me, it was everything. It was the reminder that at least one woman in my family had believed in me. I packed my bags the next morning. No announcement. No goodbyes. Just the quiet click of the front door shutting behind me, and the promise I whispered to myself. I would build a life so solid, so undeniable, that one day they'd regret every word they used to break me. And I wouldn't need their money or their permission. New York didn't greet me kindly. It was loud, unforgiving, and smelled of ambition laced with hot asphalt. My first apartment was the size of a walk-in closet, with peeling wallpaper and a window that rattled every time the subway roared by. Still, it was mine. My escape. My beginning. At the firm, I was just another face among dozens of hungry associates. Most had last names that carried weight, connections that opened doors. I had none. I had callous determination and a cracked locket that I wore like armor beneath my blouse. The nights were the hardest. I'd sit at my desk long after others left, fluorescent lights buzzing above, my coffee gone cold. Doubt gnawed at me, whispering that my mother was right, that maybe girls like me didn't last. But every time that voice rose, I buried myself in work, drafting contracts, researching cases, absorbing everything like oxygen. It wasn't long before someone noticed. Her name was Victoria Hale, a senior partner with sharp eyes and an even sharper reputation. She once stopped by my desk at midnight, surprised to find me there. You're either desperate, she said, tilting her head, or you're determined. Which is it? Determined, I answered, though my voice wavered. Her smile was small but real. Good. Desperate burns out. Determined learns. Victoria became more than a mentor. She was proof that women could lead in a world that wasn't built for us. She didn't coddle me. She pushed me, demanded more, and in return, gave me opportunities that mattered. My first small win came in the form of a minor client who needed someone to untangle a messy licensing issue. I poured myself into it, combing through every line, every loophole. When we won, the client shook my hand with a gratitude so fierce, I felt taller leaving that room. It wasn't about money yet, it was about proof. Proof that I could stand, that I belonged. From there, doors creaked open. Not wide, but enough. I began handling bigger accounts, negotiating deals that made real headlines. The paychecks grew, modest at first, then startlingly significant. I saved every cent, investing quietly, methodically. I wasn't flashy. My social media showed weekend coffee cups and city sunsets, nothing more. My family never suspected the life I was building brick by brick. But behind the scenes, I was weaving something greater. With Victoria's guidance, I learned not just to work cases, but to think like a strategist, to anticipate the market. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, I shifted from employee to entrepreneur. I started a consulting firm on the side, pouring my heart into it during weekends and sleepless nights. It was grueling, sleepless weeks, failed pitches, moments I thought I'd collapse under the weight of it all. But then came my first big break. A multinational tech company signed on. That one deal turned my side hustle into a rising empire. I never told my family. To them, I was just getting by in New York, scraping through. I let them believe it, because their dismissal gave me freedom. The less they expected of me, the more room I had to grow. By the time they would learn the truth, I had already built something too powerful to ignore. It happened on a Tuesday. Funny how ordinary days have a way of detonating into something unforgettable. I had just finished a meeting with our European partners when my assistant knocked on the door. Your family's here, she said, her brows furrowed. Unannounced. My pulse quickened, though I kept my expression calm. Show them in. The door opened, and there they were. My mother in her pearl necklace and tailored jacket, my father stiff in his gray suit, and my younger brother trailing behind, glancing around like he'd stepped into another universe. The room was designed to impress, but more importantly, it was mine. Floor-to-ceiling windows spilled sunlight across Italian leather chairs. Abstract art lined the walls, not generic prints, but pieces I'd collected during business trips. A vase of fresh orchids graced the side table, their delicate blooms a quiet statement of refinement. The air itself carried a weight, the kind that came from years of discipline and triumph. My mother's eyes darted across every detail, widening slightly, though her lips pressed into their usual disapproval. So, this is where you work? I let her words hang, then leaned back in my chair.
No, Mom.
This is what I built. Her gaze snapped to me. Built. I nodded, folding my hands atop the sleek walnut desk. The firm you've heard whispers about. The one making headlines in markets you never thought I'd understand. This, I gestured around us, is mine. Silence fell, thick and charged. My father's jaw slackened, just slightly. My brother blinked, as though trying to process the impossible. You're joking, my mother said finally, her voice clipped. You don't own this. I almost laughed at the absurdity. Not only do I own this, but last year, my company's revenue crossed $400 million. And just last month, I signed a merger deal that positioned us among the top consultancies in the country. Her face drained of color. She opened her mouth, closed it, then whispered, That can't be true. I reached into a drawer and slid a folder across the desk. Inside, press releases, financial summaries, photographs of me at conferences, shaking hands with executives. Proof they couldn't deny. My father finally spoke, his voice gravelly. You never told us. Why would I? My tone was calm, almost too calm. When I tried to share my dreams, you told me I'd fail. You made it clear your support was conditional. So I stopped asking for it. I stopped needing it. My brother shifted uncomfortably, his eyes flicking to the orchids, then back to me. But all this time, you let us believe you were barely surviving. Yes, I said simply. Because it was easier to let you underestimate me. It gave me space to grow without your voices dragging me down. My mother's hand trembled against her pearl necklace. For once, she had no cutting remark, no dismissive smirk. Only silence and shame. I let the pause linger, then stood, walking around the desk to face them directly. You wanted me to be small. You wanted me to come running back. But I didn't. I rose higher than you ever imagined, and I did it without you. The weight of my words hung between us, undeniable and unshakable. And in that moment, for the first time in my life, I saw it. The flicker of respect in my father's eyes, the cracks in my mother's armor, the realization that the daughter they once dismissed had become the woman they could no longer ignore. I didn't sit back down right away. Standing felt right, grounded, steady. For once, they had to look up at me. You didn't come here just to admire the view, I said evenly. So, tell me, what do you want? My mother's lips tightened. She looked at my father, then back at me. We need help. The company, your grandfather's legacy, it's failing. We made some mistakes. We thought. Her voice cracked before she forced it steady. We thought maybe you could save it. I inhaled slowly, the request hanging between us like smoke. There it was. The emergency, the manipulation, the same old patterns dressed up in desperation. I could, I admitted. But the question is, should I? My father bristled. That's your family's company. Without it, we lose everything. I met his gaze. Funny. When I was losing everything, you told me I wasn't worth saving. The silence that followed was suffocating. My brother shifted again, eyes on the floor. For once, my mother didn't defend herself. Maybe she couldn't. Finally, I spoke. If I help, it won't be free. There will be conditions. Their heads snapped up. First, I said firmly, the toxic cycle ends. No more manipulation. No more cutting people down, because you're afraid they might rise higher. If I'm going to step in, you will treat me and everyone else like equals. My mother opened her mouth, but I raised a hand. Second, you will each pursue something of your own. Dad, you've hidden behind the company for decades. If I'm taking control, you will finally retire and find what life is outside of titles. Mom, my voice softened, though it didn't waver. You've spent your whole existence trying to control others. If I'm doing this, you will go to therapy. Not for me. For you. Her face flushed crimson, but she didn't argue.
Not this time.
And third, I said, turning to my brother, you'll stop coasting. You've always been the golden child, shielded from accountability. If I'm investing in this rescue, you'll work under me. No special treatment. You'll earn your place or you'll lose it. He swallowed hard but nodded, the first spark of seriousness I'd ever seen in him. I let my words settle, then added the final blow. And make no mistake, if I take over, the company is mine. Not a family favor. Not a temporary patch. It will bear my leadership, my vision. I won't be a silent savior you can rewrite into your narrative. If you agree, you get salvation. If you don't, then you face the consequences of your own choices. The weight of my ultimatum filled the room. My mother looked pale, my father exhausted, my brother uncertain. For the first time in decades, I was the one dictating the terms. And the truth was, I didn't just feel powerful, I felt free. The weeks that followed felt like watching a glacier finally, slowly, shift. My parents didn't collapse into perfect people overnight. These were decades of habits, fears, and defenses, but they moved. Dad handed the company ledger to me with shaking hands and, for the first time, asked not how to preserve an image, but how to build again. He started taking walks in the mornings, awkwardly at first, then with a quiet pride that surprised us both. He signed up for a woodworking class and called one night to tell me, breathless, that he'd finished a small chair. He sounded lighter. Mom was harder. Pride and habit had long been stitched into the fabric of her identity. Unraveling them required patience. She began therapy, as promised, and the first few sessions left her raw and furious. But then she called me from the car one Sunday, voice small, to say she'd cried at a memory she hadn't allowed herself to feel in 30 years. It was an apology without fanfare, and it was enough. She learned to ask questions instead of issuing verdicts. Sometimes she still flinched into old patterns, but more often she surprised me, holding space for redirection and listening in a way that didn't feel like an ambush. My brother surprised us all. Working under me was the shock he needed. He was clumsy at first, defensive, but he kept showing up. Gradually, he developed discipline, and the entitlement that had once made him brittle softened into something like accountability. Watching him present his first independent proposal to the board, nervous, hands steady, voice clear, felt like seeing a new person step into the light. Through it all, I kept the locket. It sat on my desk, open now, the tiny crack visible like a scar you learn to admire rather than hide. One evening, after a long day of negotiations and reconciliations, I took it in my hand and felt my grandmother's voice, the same steady belief that had pushed me out the door years ago. I clipped it to my blouse and walked into a family dinner that no longer resembled a battleground. We ate, awkward at times, tender at others, and when my mother reached across the table, hesitantly at first, to touch the locket, I didn't pull away. Helping them saved more than the balance sheet. It saved a chance at something I'd once thought impossible, a family that could change without erasing who I'd become. I kept my boundaries. I enforced my terms. I gave them opportunities to grow, and they took them. On the night I signed the final paper transferring official control, I stood on my office balcony and watched the city. My city breathe. The locket warmed against my collarbone. I whispered into the cool air, not for them, but for myself. I built what I needed. I saved what mattered. I kept my dignity. And then I closed the door behind the woman I used to be.